My name is Michelle Levine. I'm here to tell America about the diabolical criminal activity that corporate America will stoop to for corporate greed. My mother was a single parent. She was a wonderful person. My parents divorced when I was 4, and ever since then we were each other's world. And everybody loved my mother who met my mother. She was a people person. She loved people, people loved her. Anybody who knows us know that we were symbiotic, that we were bonded at the hip. We meant everything to each other. My mother, unfortunately, had some back problems because we had taken care of my grandmother after she had her stroke for 4.5 years at home. I'm a home health caregiver. And after my grandmother passed away in 91, at 93 years of age, my mother went to the orthopedic doctor at the Watson Clinic where she worked and said, I'm having this severe back pain. And Glenn Barden said, oh, Flo, you're getting older, you're going to have back pain. And immediately started her on pain pills and Vioxx, no back x-ray. Because she had started the first grade, I started rather the first grade, and she started her first year of nurses training. She worked at the Watson Clinic in Lakeland for 25 years for a man who was an internal medicine specialist, and then he had to retire early to manage the family money. So my mother was still having just severe back pain, and but yet was taking Vioxx and pain pills. I was able to finally get her off the pain pills, but still she was on the Vioxx. Then in 1997 she had a mild heart attack and had to have triple bypass surgery. She was on Vioxx. And she recovered from that. They said, their heart's mended, don't wait on them hand and foot, but I did because my mother had never had an invasive procedure like that in her life. And it did take her about a year to recover. So she was doing well. And December 24th of 1999, she had a stroke at home. And we lived together, of course. I had moved back home when we started taking care of my grandmother. And she rattled for 24 hours and said, Michelle, what's wrong with me? But she didn't want to go to the ER because it was Christmas Eve and she didn't want to bother the doctors. I got her to the hospital. She was in there for a nightmarish 6.5 weeks. One medical malpractice, medical negligence after another. We were recommended to a high-profile attorney down in Miami. Basically, I signed her out AMA after 6.5 weeks, got her home. They had let her weight go within 3 weeks from 115 pounds to 77 pounds. I had to ask them to take a weight on her. So, I saw them killing my mother and it wasn't her time to go yet. So I signed her out AMA after a 6.5 weeks nightmare. She said, being an RN, knowing she wasn't getting the care that she deserved, she said, get me out of here. You people are effing killing me. She says, I've got to get out of here. Got her home, and they had turned me into Adult Protective Services, alleging neglect and abuse when I wouldn't let them slam her in a nursing home against her will. Got her home and settled, got the home health care equipment that we needed, home health nurses coming in and so forth. And it was just amazing when the investigator came out. She was so embarrassed. She said, Michelle, I go to homes where there's no electricity, there's no food, the loved one is laying in their waste for days, weeks, months. She says, I am so embarrassed. She said, I don't trust the medical profession anymore. And I told her, I said, at this point in time, we had doctors and nurses lying to us. I said, my mother being an RN at the Watson Clinic for 32.5 years, total profession, medically, a total of 37 years, that no longer did we trust doctors and nurses. It's bad enough that sometimes you can't trust attorneys, but if you can't trust doctors and nurses, what has this world come to? I don't know. It's just been a nightmare. I've been walking around in post-traumatic shock syndrome because I still can't believe what happened to my mother. Back in 2000, after I brought her home, we hired this attorney from Miami, high profile. He got paid off under the table not to take mother's case. He got paid off by her health insurance company. He's now in federal prison and was charged with fraud and embezzlement. He had embezzled $13 million from a client and of course was accepting under-the-table payoffs. His name is Louis Robles in a Florida penitentiary. So then she recovered from that. It took her a year to recover from that nightmare. And I started taking her to University of South Florida, College of Medicine, and Tampa General Hospital, where she was treated like a queen. Immediately the doctor found a huge aneurysm in her abdomen that was probably caused from a peg tube removal at Lakeland Regional in 2000. And so she had a AAA removal February of 2002. He said, this is going to be harder to recover from than any open heart surgery. It'll take 6 months, maybe a year, maybe more. My mother recovered in 3 months. She was back, good as new. And she was so ecstatic, and they were just amazed at how well she did. And she said, that's because I have an excellent health care provider. And of course, she was meaning me. So Mother was doing fantastic. We had opened our family business when Mother had retired in 1996, a dance and performing arts studio. My mother had been a professional singer her whole life, never had a voice class in her life. She was just blessed with the gift of vocals, just fabulous. And unfortunately, a little girl came into the studio with the flu. And the next day, when Mother was also at the studio with me that day, the next day Mother started with the sniffles, the next day coughing and blowing her nose, and then the third day she had a temperature. So I took her over to Tampa General Hospital. It was a Saturday evening, February 25th, 2006, and we got there about 9:30 p.m. She had always received excellent treatment over there. But it was a busy night, a Saturday night in Tampa, and a lot of cases were coming in, and we got there at 9:30. When we went to register at 11 p.m., the gal said it'll be 6 hours before she could be seen. And Mother looked at me and she said, the hell with that, Michelle. She said, please take me home. I've got to sleep. And her breathing got better. So we did. I took her home. The next morning she woke up in respiratory distress, yelling for me to come help her, and I went in to help her. I said, Mother, back to Tampa General, or should we try Bartow? Because there was no way we would ever seek treatment ever again at Lakeland Regional, where she was almost killed back in 99 and 2000. So another attorney had also gotten paid off back in 2002 over in Bartow. But anyhow, I took her to Bartow Regional February 26th, and she got into the emergency room. She was admitted with pneumonia and mild congestive heart failure. She had to stay in the emergency room for 24 hours because there were no beds available. They were waiting for either somebody to be discharged or for a patient to pass away. They had given her Ambien to sleep, and it pulled reverse. She had a severe reaction to it. My mother didn't tolerate newer medications. And they said, well, we're not giving her Ambien anymore. She was just off the wall, jumping off the gurney, ripping out her IVs, you know. And I said, no, she doesn't tolerate new meds. A room came available the next afternoon, February 27th, and she was actually getting better. February 28th, she turned 75 years old in the hospital. And then March 1st, she was doing really well, getting her breathing treatments. The guy came in to give her a breathing treatment. He said, well, maybe everybody might get their breathing treatments tonight. I don't know. And then on March 2nd, my mother was all set to be discharged. It states right here. I have all her medical records here. It states right here on March 2nd that Mother was oriented ×3, which meant she had all her wits about her. She had sanity, completely had it together. She had catheter removed, was ambulatory, meant she was able to walk around. And that patient states, quote unquote, I get to go home today. And they asked me, they said, she had a stroke? And I said, yes, back in '99. Well, that's all it took. Some phone calls were made, and we didn't realize Glenn Barden, as prescribing physician of the Vioxx, was coming under fire too, because Mother had a class action lawsuit with Merck Pharmaceuticals, and her attorney, Doug Bernetti, told me she was the best case that he had, that she would be getting in excess of $5 million for the stroke she suffered from the Vioxx back December 24th of 19.